Hi, I'm Gabby, and this is What Now, a podcast about figuring it out in real time. Here we explore the questions and challenges that come with life after college. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I wanted to talk about something that was inspired by a recent thing my therapist told me. She said that for the rest of summer, I get to learn how to be bored. I am releasing this episode post summer, but this is just a reflection of something that happened over the summer. Just wanted to put that out there. So, anyways, she said for the rest of summer, I get to learn how to be bored. And you guys have to know that I grew up constantly doing one of my hobbies or I was in school. So I didn't really have time to be bored. And honestly, I loved it because I love doing 100 things. And then in college, of course, I set more time for myself, but the free time I had does not compare to the free time I've been having this summer. As an unemployed post grad 21-year-old, I certainly have never had more free time in my life. And in fact, if you feel bored, know that you're not alone because studies show that over 60% of adults report feeling bored at least once a week. And if you also hate the feeling of boredom, a 2014 study led by social psychologist Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia found that many participants, especially men, actually chose to push a button and shock themselves rather than sit alone and do nothing for 15 minutes. So, if anything I just said shocked you or resonated with you, stay tuned because today we're going to dive into what boredom really is, why it matters, and how to actually navigate it. First, I want to talk about what boredom actually is, when do we feel it, all of that. So, one definition I found from boredom comes from Leo Tolstoy, who said that boredom is the desire for desires. And I actually heard this from a cognitive neuroscientist named James Dankirk, who I've read a lot from for this episode. So, boredom is different from downtime or disconnecting because downtime is intentional, it's a chance to rest and recharge, but boredom is unintentional. It's uncomfortable and something we often want to avoid. So, when do we actually feel boredom? According to Aaron Westgate, a researcher at the University of Florida, we can feel bored when a task is too easy or too hard, basically, when it feels to fully capture our attention. We can feel bored when we don't find meaning in what we're doing, and we can feel bored when what we're doing doesn't align with our goals or values. So, I was wondering what is boredom really like? And to put it another way, I found that boredom is actually a signal similar to pain. James Danker explains pain is not there to make you feel hurt. Pain is there as a signal to sort of galvanize you into action to address whatever it is that caused you the hurt in the first place. Boredom is the same. So that's what I found on what boredom really is. It's not just nothing to do, but it's actually a signal from your brain. And the weird thing I learned is that trying to escape it all the time can actually make things worse. So I wanted to dive into why we shouldn't just run from it next. It's actually important to not run away from boredom when you feel it and instead allow it to help you understand what changes you need to make. James Dankirk said that it's actually important for those who feel bored to sit with it because those who are more likely to be bored tend to feel that they don't have a lot of agency. And when people offer them a list of things to do instead, they're actually taking that agency away from them. Because of this, it's also important for us to stop scrolling on our phones passively as a way to get rid of our boredom. I watched a TED Talk called How Boredom Can Lead to Your Most Brilliant Ideas, and the speaker, Manoush Zomorodi, she did an experiment where she invited people who felt that their relationship with their phones was codependent, and she asked them to follow her instructions for a week on challenges for them to do. So, for example, on the third day of the challenge, participants had to delete their most attention grabbing app for one day. What she found is that people were starting to feel empowered just after the first week, even though their screen time was only down by 6 minutes. The participants were in control of how to use their phones and not the other way around, because as we all know, all these tech companies are fighting for our attention. So, this project suggested that, if anything, how facing your boredom, because so many of us are guilty of it, and I'm so guilty of this too. We'll use our phones as a way to distract ourselves, and in reality, being intentional about how we use our phones and what we decide to do when we feel bored gives us back our agency, and we become better at facing our boredom. The Mayo Clinic says in an article, consuming so much time on electronics lessens the amount of bored time, but also it causes a different problem. The less people experience boredom, the less equipped the brain is to deal with it. This is a little life update related to this because I am loving the no Instagram life. And by that, I do mean my personal account that I'm not using anymore. Otherwise, you guys should totally follow the podcast on at What Now Podcast on Instagram. But, anyways, it's literally true that by just like not going on Instagram and deleting it, I actually feel like I've been doing things that I wasn't before. And I didn't realize how much time I feel like I have in the day when I'm not just preoccupied but just wanting to doom scroll or just passively scroll or go on Instagram because I'm bored. I'm like starting to read again, or I've been like really into the New York Times puzzles lately, which maybe sounds a little grandma of me, but like not being on Instagram, I'm actually like forcing myself to like do other things if I like feel like I need to go on my phone, and I try to be more intentional with it. Um yeah. So I just wanted to say that because it's actually really helpful, and I highly recommend that you all try it too, even if it's just for like 24 hours. So, moving on, another reason why we shouldn't avoid our boredom is that it can sometimes be a gateway to mind wandering. And mind wandering allows for more creative connections. Now, I do need to say that being bored does not make someone more creative, and there has been research done to prove that. However, boredom can lead to your mind wandering, which can then allow you to find new perspectives and ways of viewing situations and coming up with ideas. Neuroscientists studying what's called the brain's default mode network explains that this rest state is important because your brain is consolidating memories and reflecting on lessons learned. The brain plays through scenarios and applies what was learned and how it could be used in the future. People spend time thinking about themselves and others. They reminisce about the past and daydream about the future. It makes sense why we actually come up with some of our amazing ideas in the shower, or why maybe we have an argument one day and then after spending time with it and going on a drive or on a walk, we suddenly get clarity and a new perspective on actually what happened. Okay, so boredom is trying to tell us something, but now I'm like, okay, what do we actually do when we're bored though? Because, okay, great, I understand it's a signal, but what's the next step? Ultimately, I found that it really comes down to the individual because everyone's boredom is rooted in a different cause. So, for example, if the task you're doing is too easy and that's why you're bored, then finding a way to challenge yourself is one way to get rid of that boredom. For example, instead of walking the same route all the time, maybe you try to run it instead. If you're bored because a task doesn't feel meaningful, Dr. Westgate explains that sometimes it's about reframing it for yourself. How does this connect to your bigger goals, or what smaller skills are you gaining that will pay off in the long run? On a more general feeling of boredom, not because it's necessarily linked to a specific task that you're doing, I found that thinking about trying something new is a good way of combating your boredom. So, cooking a new recipe or learning a new instrument. New experiences wake up your brain and give you that sense of purpose that boredom is missing. If you already have a creative outlet, it's also really great to turn to that. I know when I'm bored, I will always play the piano, and there's never one time where I didn't feel better afterwards. I have so many friends who are so talented and will paint or write, and I know that they love turning to those outlets when they don't know what to do. Next, make a list of activities or things you can do when you're bored. And I do have to say, for the record, that it's completely okay to say that, like, you want to watch Netflix or a movie when you're bored. As long as you're intentional about it, that's totally fine. My therapist will literally tell me, like, did I have my scheduled brain rot TikTok time? Because I love scrolling on TikTok. And honestly, when I do it intentionally and not passively, I feel fine. But obviously, when I'm like, ugh, I'm bored, let me just scroll on TikTok, that's when it's not okay. So, as long as you're intentional about what you do, it's okay. Anyways, like I learned, I don't want to give you all the ideas because we all need to feel that we have that agency. And that's what I learned. And I didn't realize that, but we do need to figure out our own ways to experience our boredom. And even when I was doing my research, I was learning that psychologists were saying the next time your kid, like for parents, the next time your kids tell you, like, I'm super bored, I don't know what to do, they were telling the parents, don't give your kids alternatives. Have them come up with ideas because they'll be able to figure out what is actually beneficial to them and what defines purpose for them. But those are a few things I found that may help all of us rethink our boredom. I know not everyone has the luxury of free time, but when I do, I've been trying to see boredom as a privilege now. It's a chance to explore my hobbies, make new goals for myself, go back to projects that I've been putting aside or things that I always said I wanted to do but never did. So yeah, I'd love to hear if you guys have your own ways of navigating your boredom. I'll send a Q&A on Instagram and would love to hear answers. I'll definitely share them anonymously, of course. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share about what I learned on boredom. And before I go, here's the end of episode little life update. I had such a fun day at the beach a couple days ago, and it wasn't warm at all. It was like not summer weather whatsoever. And I just have to say, the beach is always the right answer because you can never go wrong. It was an amazing day, even though it was freezing. So not to add to your lack of agency, but perhaps put a cozy beach day on your list of things to do when bored. It was super fun. Bring snacks. We brought cards. Bring your speaker. Bring games. We played like air tennis type of thing. Super fun. That was kind of a basic update, but I just love the beach so much, and like honestly, everybody should just go outside. Just go outside. It always makes you feel better. I feel like I feel like that'll be my little update. Good beach day. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to What Now? If this episode hit home, I'd love for you to subscribe and share it with a friend who's figuring things out too. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, we're all just figuring it out as we go.